In a wide-ranging press conference, President Trump said that he will tell his Russian counterpart to end the war on Ukraine when the two men meet on Friday. The American and Russian leaders will hold talks in Alaska on ending fighting, but it appears that the Ukrainian leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, will not be taking part. Well, Donald Trump played down any expectation of a breakthrough, calling the talks a feel-out meeting. He said that the aim was to establish the Russian leader's intentions. He confirmed that President Zelensky will not be at the talks, but said that he would speak with him by telephone afterwards. Well, Ukraine's European allies have been pushing hard to make sure that Zelensky does have a seat at the table. And in the last few hours, the EU foreign ministers held a virtual meeting to discuss their next steps. Europe currently provides the bulk of the support to Ukraine, but there's no sign that they'll be represented in Alaska. That's despite suggestions in Washington that if a ceasefire happens, Europe could be required to deploy a peacekeeping force. Well, let's take a listen to what President Trump had to say in the last couple of hours.
I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin, and I'm going to be telling him, you got to end this war, you got to end it. I think we'll have constructive conversations. Then after that meeting, immediately, maybe as I'm flying out, maybe as I'm leaving the room, I'll be calling the European leaders who I get along with very well. But I'll be speaking to Zelensky. The next meeting will be with Zelensky and Putin, or Zelensky and Putin and me. I'll be there if they need, but I want to have a meeting set up between the two leaders.
Well, those comments come as President Zelensky warned that offering Russia concessions would not persuade the Kremlin to stop fighting. Writing on X, the Ukrainian leader said that Russia's dragging out the war and therefore it deserves stronger global pressure. And he went on to claim that Russia refuses to stop the killings and therefore must not receive any rewards or benefits. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the German Chancellor confirmed that Friedrich Merz had spoken to President Trump and stressed that Germany expects Kyiv to be included in any negotiations.
The Chancellor expressed his hopes for the talks that we are clearly committed to involving the Ukrainians in this process, because the goal is to truly achieve a sustainable and just peace that is only conceivable with Ukraine. It's completely out of the question to achieve this goal over the heads of Ukrainians.
Meanwhile, Poland's Prime Minister said that the seizure of Ukrainian territories as part of any peace deal must not be allowed.
For us, the question of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty is a question not only of solidarity with our neighbour, but first and foremost a question of our security. And that is why I will be waiting, like all of you, for the results of the meeting between President Trump and President Putin. I have a lot of fears and a lot of hopes.
Well, the Ukrainian city of Kyiv has faced some of the most severe Russian attacks, including a recent drone strike on a shopping centre. The city's mayor has spoken about the upcoming talks between President Trump and President Putin and his hopes for peace.
There is a meeting planned at the end of the week between President Trump and Putin regarding the resolution of how we move forward. We hope that it's still possible to achieve a just peace. For now, a ceasefire and then peace. This is very important to us. Moreover, the peace should not last 1 year or 2 or 3, but forever.
Well, let's pick up on all of this with our first guest, Vadim Pristiko, who was the former Ukrainian ambassador to the UK. And before that, sir, you were actually the Minister of Foreign Affairs. We've had this update from Donald Trump. He gave a rather long press conference, and we had a little bit of an insight into what we can expect in Alaska. The main thing is that Volodymyr Zelensky will not be there. He will be called after that meeting, but he won't be at the meeting. What do you make of that?
Hello, first of all, thank you for having me here. There are obvious reasons for optimism here, and at least I can name it that the President Trump is very careful in how he formulates his expectations. He's not telling that we will be given a ready-made sort of deal, which we'll have only to get and act accordingly. but he's only trying the waters, trying to understand what is the expectations on the Russian side, what can be done. And we would love to sit at the table and hoped that President Zelensky will be welcomed there. Obviously, it's not happening, regardless, despite what the European leaders, the EU, the NATO boss were saying and offering and suggesting Trump to get the Ukraine president at the table as well.
He did suggest afterwards that potentially there could be another meeting between Zelensky and Putin at which the President Trump, may or may not be there, depending on the outcome of how this goes. But I just wonder, the fact that the president is saying that he finds it very respectful that the Russian leader is coming to the US, meeting him on US soil. I wonder, what's your assessment? Is he falling into the hands of Vladimir Putin?
That's exactly what I fear. I would tell that the Russians are setting yet another political trap for Trump. If you remember, a couple of months ago, when Europeans came to Kyiv and collectively with President Zelensky decided to introduce harsh sanctions, President Putin did the same. He just called Trump and told him that he is eager to restart the negotiations. There were empty negotiations, but it was enough to let the Trump get off this sort of march against Moscow with the ultimatums and demands and everything. Same happening here. As soon as Trump is coming to the boiling point when he is about to do something, like he is going to introduce the sanctions against third parties, those ones who are buying Russian oil and fueling the Russian war machine. The Putin is offering something, like this time is meeting in Alaska. We hope that this is the last time the President Trump is sort of allowed this situation to happen, and he will see through the attempts of Putin just procrastinate more, get more time, buy more time, and do what he is doing, just fighting and killing.
Like I say, this is the first time that we're getting any kind of real insight from the president as to what we can expect on Friday in Alaska. And he was talking about there being some land swapping, some changes in land as part of a deal. He says that it could be good for Ukraine, good stuff, not bad stuff. He then adds also some bad stuff for both. I mean, what do you make of where he's going with this?
There are some theory in diplomacy when both sides have to be equally unhappy of negotiations, then you can call the negotiations successful, which I don't believe in this case, because what we are here to observe, that Russians are expected to be given lands of Ukrainian sovereign territory. They are talking about 4 regions and specifically the peninsula of Crimea. These 4 regions, only half of them are taken actually by Russians, and we are fighting all these 3 years defining them, not just Ukrainians, all of us, with the help of our European and American partners. I do not see why would we give up just for the sake of Putin stopping the war. We did it. We stopped him already. We can be reinforced. There are Russian money frozen, can be given to Ukraine or our partners who are producing the defensive instruments we need to continue with the war. If that's the easy way out, we don't buy it. We don't believe it. And by the way, Zelensky doesn't have a right to give up any Ukrainian territories.
Of course, because there has to be a referendum as in line with the Ukrainian constitution, but you can't have a referendum if parts of your country are occupied by Russia. We have to leave it there. Vadim Pristiko, former Ukrainian ambassador to the UK, also formerly Minister of Foreign Affairs for Ukraine. Thank you very much, and apologies, we are out of time. But there are some points that I want to pick up on with what Vadim was saying with our next guest, Barry DiNovo, former US Secret Service agent. Also, you're an author, an analyst on national security, military strategy, and of course, the Ukraine-Russia war. I just wonder, do you get this sense that possibly Donald Trump is being played by his Russian counterpart?
Thanks for having me on your program. No, I don't think so. This is Donald Trump's attempt to do a genuine negotiation. This is a good thing that this is happening. Let's not forget that. The Russian leader and American leader are coming to a table to try to negotiate an end to horrible war. I fully expect that there will be hospitalities given between each other, the pleasantries. There will be probably an agreed prisoner exchange, maybe even some agreement to humanitarian exchange. Donald Trump is acting as an intermediary to the Ukrainian government, or he is acting on their behalf right now to get peace. He's said it right in his peace conference or his press conference earlier today that he's going to be calling Zelensky first when he's done with this meeting, and then the European leaders. So they are very much in play here. But I think Donald Trump is probably the only person on planet Earth that can negotiate this to an end at this point.
But what is he realistically negotiating, Barry? Because we heard there from Vadim, he's the former Ukrainian ambassador to the UK. It's not even within Zelensky's gift to be able to swap territories, to give up Ukrainian territories. It's against the constitution. So what authority does Donald Trump have when he's talking about potential land swaps?
I think the President of the United States has the authority of influence over a great deal of the planet. He is the most powerful man on Earth. He has a special relationship with Vladimir Putin that's not denied. He is setting up the first stages of what may very well be an end to this war. So it is not going to be something like your other guest mentioned, was very intelligent to say, it's not going to be anything that either side is going to be happy with at the end. I do expect land exchanges, but when it comes to Russia, they want resources. This is a battle for resources. This is a battle or a war for the Sea of Azov, which Russia now has. They've gobbled up an entire sea. So somewhere in the Russian doctrine, they've come to the conclusion that at all costs, they have to get into Ukraine, take the Donbass, take the Sea of Azov, and also hold Crimea. Otherwise, the Russian Empire or the country itself cannot exist or continue to sustain itself. So that's why Vladimir Putin is going full bore into this, and they're not relenting whatsoever. We have to figure out, or President Trump has to figure out, if even Vladimir Putin is telling the truth in Alaska, and see if there is some way that they could negotiate a peace. Now, beyond this, if there isn't, I fully expect you're going to see American or European peacekeepers in Kyiv.
You reckon so? That's a really strong comment. You're suggesting a lot for Ukraine to give up. What does it get in return? EU membership, the promise of that? NATO membership? You're talking about possibly foreign peacekeepers in Ukraine. Russia's not going to go for that.
I think it's time for Vladimir Putin to start worrying about what the Europeans and the Americans are doing in Ukraine and not the other way around. We lost an opportunity, militarily speaking, when there was 120,000 Russian troops on the border of Ukraine before they went in. That was the time to send in peacekeepers to prevent Vladimir Putin from coming into Ukraine and doing what he lied about doing, which is saying, oh no, he was not going to go into Ukraine. So if we were to ask Winston Churchill or General Montgomery what they would be doing right now, they would be sending in troops to vital land spaces to deny the Russians access. It's just that simple.
Fascinating to get your insight. Barry DiNovo, former US Secret Service agent, thank you so much for your time.